Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing isn't
So some
there,
readers love that, and some readers are like, but I wanted more of this. So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. Today I'm lucky enough to be joined by two guests, both fantastical young adult authors in their own right, but who recently teamed up to co-curate A Taste of Darkness. It's Amy McCaw and Maria Kuzniar. Welcome to the podcast, guys.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for having us.
Hi, thanks so much for having us.
You guys are so welcome. Let's go straight into it with A Taste of Darkness, an anthology series, 13 stories, spooky, haunting, thrillery stuff, all YA, all by different authors, including yourselves. Which one of you has the better elevator pitch?
Oh, that's a tough question. Do you think? The thing is, I'm terrible at pitching. Even if the pitch is good, I could find a way to ruin it. Like, I couldn't pitch the Mina books until I met Kim Curran at an event, and she pitches for a living to TV companies, and she pitched the Mina books to me. And I feel like that's the only reason I got a book deal, because she taught me how to pitch those books.
Do you want me to have a go, Amy?
I mean, I tell you what, you pitch your story, and it'll give me time to think about how to pitch mine.
Oh, I'm pitching my story. I thought I was pitching the whole
I mean, go for it. Jamie, what would you like? Would you like a story pitch or an anthology pitch?
I'll take whatever you guys will give me.
Okay, well, A Taste of Darkness is a YA horror anthology that has 13 wildly different but all creepy, spooky stories from a coven of 13 authors. And my story, The Wolf and the Witch, is a Slavic-inspired retelling of Little Red Riding Hood with a very terrifying Baba Yaga in it.
That's cool. I also love how you described it as a coven of authors.
Yeah, unofficially they've been calling us like the Council of Spooky Bitches, but that's kind of more in private, so we're a coven.
Yeah, I don't know if the publishers would appreciate that on the cover.
No, I'm not sure.
Brilliant. You see me as a consummate professional, Jamie. You hear that pitch? You know, she's good, isn't she? Shall I have a go at pitching mine now that Mia's done it?
Go on, let's hear it, Amy.
So mine's called The House with Teeth. And when I started talking about it with Mia, it was just a title, and I had no idea what this house was going to be. And I start from the title and had to work back. And it ended up being about a girl called Violet who is throwing a Halloween party for her 18th birthday. But the house that she lives in has other plans for the party than Violet does, and things are about to take a really dark and spooky turn.
Well, there you go. There's two really great sort of jumping off points for the sort of thing that's in this book, and of course, there's 11 other stories by 11 other authors in it. Let's talk about the inception of this. Like, who had the idea first? Who spoke to who and was like, oh, let's do this?
Well, Mia and I message each other virtually every day. And one day, I think we were talking about like just writing a book together was the initial. It was like, hey, should we write a book together? And then I said to Mia, do you know what I've always wanted to do? I've always wanted to do a YA horror anthology. And Mia is probably my least spooky friend in real life. But Mia was like, yes, let's do it. And it turns out Mia is amazing at writing spooky things, as well as all the beautiful, fantastical things that she writes as well.
And Mia, you wanted to co-write something, or you just wanted to do anything with Amy?
I thought it would just be a lot of fun to begin with. I wasn't sure anything would come of it, but it ended up with this amazing anthology. And yeah, it's been just a brilliant journey. I've enjoyed it so much.
So once you two have chatted and been like, oh, this is cool, let's do this thing. At what point in that process do you sort of either speak to your agent or just speak to an editor at your publishers and say, listen, we want to do this cool thing. Do you think it's going to work? Do you think that we can get this published?
I emailed my agent with a subject heading of, so I've had this crazy idea. What do you think?
Yeah, I did similar to mine. You tell him what your agent said to me, and I'll explain what all of you said to me.
Yeah, my agent thought it was a great idea. Go for it. She already knew Amy's agent, so she was happy to work together with Amy's agent. And obviously, once we collated the whole kind of package, that's when it went out on submission. Last Halloween, I think. Yeah, it went very quickly.
Yeah, it was literally on Halloween that it went out on submission, and we got the first offer that day, so it was amazing.
Wow.
But can I just add that all three of them, I tend to be a bit of a dreamer, and both of our agents and me were saying, look, manage your expectations. Anthologies can be a hard sell, and don't get too excited. And it's nice to be right for once and to say, actually, I was right. Being a dreamer worked on this occasion. I think you need to be a bit of a dreamer to be an author anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very pleased to be right on this because, like Mia said, it's been so fun. I don't think I realised until we did our first event together with loads of the authors, and I just looked down the line and thought, how many times do you get to write a book with so many friends? Like, normally you're just doing it completely on your own. And it felt like a really collaborative process, like people sharing ideas and then doing the events together. It's just been great. It feels really unique.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's, so as we said, 13 authors, the spookiest number. Lots of alumni from this podcast, actually, because you have got Cynthia Murthy's on it, Rosie Talbot's on it, Catherine Foxfield's on it, and of course yourself, Amy. But aside from the two of you each writing a story as part of it, you are also the co-curators. Now, what exactly does that mean? What does it entail as a role?
Do you want to explain this one, Mia, or do you want me to jump in?
I was waiting for you to talk. I don't mind.
I know. Yeah, I can explain if you want. So we emailed our agents and they said that the best way to give this a good chance to get published was for both of us to write a really polished story, but to find however many other authors we wanted. And it was Mia's idea to use 13 authors, the spookiest number, which I thought was a great idea. So we just started thinking of a list of people that we thought would be great. Some of them we were thinking of it outside the box, like Louis is a good friend of both of ours. Hasn't written YA before, hasn't written horror before. We just had a feeling that she'd be good and that she'd want to do it. And then there were people like Cynthia and Catherine, who I knew, who were more obvious choices that this is what they already write. So we came up with this list and we started contacting people. And the response was great, wasn't it, Mia? It was really lovely that people were enthusiastic right from the beginning.
Oh, it was great. It was very heartwarming, and it was really fun to sort of see their pitches for short stories come in and all the different ideas. And yeah, it was great fun.
Did you sort of get like a pitch of each of the short stories before they actually wrote them?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we went out on submission with my short story and Amy's short story written in full and edited by our agents. But we went out with just a pitch from all the other authors that were going to be included and kind of a general overview of things. That's how it went out in its little submission package.
Okay. And did you guys do any kind of editorial on those pitches, as in with the individual authors, and be like, oh, we're kind of trying to lean towards a certain arc or like a certain kind of way with this thing, so it's all kind of coherent, or is it just sort of what they sent you, that's what went out on the pitch?
We let them just use their imagination, to be honest. We just went with it. We gave them a brief in that it had to be, this length, and we wanted it to be creepy and spooky, but we weren't limiting in terms of genre or themes or anything like that. We just let them go for it, basically.
Wow, that's so cool.
We had to look at the pictures to just check that nothing sounded too similar and that we had a good spread. And it just naturally happened that way, that because I think the authors have got really diverse interests in what they wanted to write about, it just somehow worked that we had everything from sci-fi to folk horror to, fairy tale reimaginings. It ended up being a really good spread of stories.
Okay. So you really just kind of said, do you want to write this thing? Go absolutely wild. As long as there's like a sort of spooky element with it, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's how we ended up with taxidermy and creepy dolls and anything the authors want to write about, a creepy bride mannequin that may or may not be something more than she appears. The authors really went for it.
Is there, it must be so difficult when you have this different range of authors. This is published with Scholastic. Is there do you have like one editor that kind of goes through all the stories, or does everyone sort of edit their own stuff to kind of as best they can? You guys said yours was edited by your agents, but was there then another editor that came in?
Yes, it was edited to begin with by Yasmin Morrissey, who at the time worked for Scholastic, and she was the one who bought the anthology on behalf of Scholastic. And we went through the editorial process with her. All the authors edited their short stories independently with Yaz. And then at the end, Amy and I kind of copy edited everything with Yaz. So it was all coherent, and we agreed on the story order and everything like that with our editor. And yeah.
That must be, I imagine it's like very exciting for Yasmin, the editor, to do something like that where it's so many different voices and stories at once. But also that must be very like, it's a big task to be like, this is one book and there's 13 different authors writing in 13 different styles with 13 different like main characters.
Yeah, and like Mia said, it's things like choosing the order is super important, because you want the first story to feel quite representative of the anthology, and to give people, if you like this is going to be a book for you. And like choosing the last story was important because it's the note that you leave people on. And then the order within as well. We wanted to kind of spread out any stories that touched on similar things so that people weren't kind of just having one note. And things like my story is set at Halloween. So that one didn't go first because we didn't want people to think it was just a Halloween anthology. So lots of thinking went into the order. And
yeah,
I think mostly Yaz kind of hit on a great order. And then we went back and forth on the position of a few stories just to make it, feel as coherent as it could.
Well, it sounds like you guys this sounds like just a really fun project that you did with lots of your friends and then like sort of authors that you admire.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We felt very lucky.
Absolutely.
What a treat. Would either of you want to do something similar at some point in the future?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, okay.
How about you, Mia? Has any bit put you off, or are you up for this again?
No, definitely. I had great fun doing this. So yeah, absolutely.
So potentially the first of many anthologies.
I hope so. That would be amazing.
We talked a lot about Taste of Darkness. Taste of Darkness is not the only recent publication for you guys. As Mia, you've had your latest novel, Upon a Frosted Star, that came out in September. You had a very polished elevator pitch for A Taste of Darkness. How's your elevator pitch for Upon a Frosted Star?
Well, Upon a Frosted Star actually came out 1 week after A Taste of Darkness, so I was very busy. And it's my latest adult book. I say that to differentiate from my children's books. Sometimes when I say that to people not in publishing, I get kind of a bemused reaction, but this is my book for grown-ups. And Upon a Frosted Star is like Swan Lake meets The Great Gatsby. It's set across the 1920s with all these great magical parties, and there's an abandoned, mysterious manor house, a brooding artist, and a mysterious ballerina that's host to these parties.
It's another sort of magical retelling, fairy tale style thing with more ballet stuff.
Yes.
And the cover is beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Especially, I saw on your website the sprayed edge version. Beautiful.
Yes, they've made such beautiful books. I love the design so much. The cover designer, Charlotte Phillips, she's just brilliant at her job. I love the covers she did for Upon a Frosted Star and Midnight in Everwood, my other book as well.
Yes, the two of them match very nicely together, so it would look very good on a bookshelf.
They do. I'm very lucky.
And Amy, you have some news as well. You recently revealed the cover for the third book in the Mina series, Mina and the Cult, which is coming out, is it April 24?
Yes, April. It seemed like ages away, and suddenly it's only a few months. It's quite scary.
Is that going to wrap up the Mina series as a trilogy, or will there be more after that?
It wraps up the trilogy. I'd always thought that I definitely wouldn't write anymore, and I'm not fully closing the door on that, but this does wrap up the arc that I always wanted to tell. I'm so thrilled I got to do it, because when I pitched it to my agent, I said I wanted to write 3 books, and I knew what they were all about. So it feels really nice that I've been able to actually finish the story that, how many years ago now? I'm just looking at 7 years ago since I started on this journey of writing the Mina books. It's nice to finish it all off.
Amazing. So I've got a few questions for the two of you. I know we touched on a bit of this before when you were on the podcast, but that was a long time ago, Amy. Maybe things have changed. Well, let's start with Amy, and then we'll do Mia. Plotter or pantser?
Both. I start off with the best intentions that I'm going to plot out a whole book and it's going to be great, and then I get about halfway through and go, I don't know what happens at the end. I'm going to have to start writing this to figure it out. And I think that a lot of my writing comes from discovery. I think that some of my best ideas don't actually come until later in the editing process when I've written something. And sometimes as I'm writing it, I know it's wrong, and I've got a scene set in a really creepy location, and it's on it about its fourth draft, and I know that I'm really close now, and I'm getting really happy with it. But sometimes I just have to write that rubbish draft, and then I can improve it, and then that's when the really good twists and ideas start flowing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so true that writing what you're not going to use, I think, can often be an important step for like finding the thing that you are going to use.
Yeah, I've come to terms with that. I've got some friends, like I know when I interviewed Cynthia, she said that she does a lot of her plotting in her head, and she doesn't like to write until she is quite sure what it's going to be, because she hates deleting. Whereas I know you know Naomi, she sort of writes a bit by discovery like me, and sometimes sets off into a book with even less of an idea than I do. And I find that quite, I know some people hear that and think that's terrifying, but I find that exciting. Whereas Melissa Well-Ivor, who you also know, she plots everything out in incredible detail. And I just think it's so fascinating that we all have got to a finished book that, you know, I think are all great books, but just come at it from completely different directions.
Yeah, exactly. It's writing such a personal thing, and it's all about figuring out the thing that works for you, right?
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Jamie? I feel like I asked you this last time, but I can't remember what your answer was.
Oh, ever changing. My answer is I feel like I'm the thing I'm writing at the moment. I'm working very hard to plot and plot it more than I've plotted anything before. This is partly because I decided to write a heist, and I realized that heist should be plotted.
You probably can't pants that. No, you'll end up with some people in some very strange places that you haven't planned out properly, and like weapons and things that are being stolen. You need to track all those objects really carefully, don't you?
Exactly, yeah. It would be chaotic. So I'm trying that out, and I'm actually really liking it at the moment, just having a very kind of thought out plan. Mia, how do you approach it? Plotter or pantser?
Hey, Mel. Bri here. Gotta work from home today because the whole family caught a nasty... Daddy! Hey, Mikey! If you're gonna puke, find the popcorn bowl! But my availability is 110%. Coincidentally, so is my fever. Kidding. Mel, I'm so cold but hot. But I'm gonna get you that budget just as soon as... Mikey! Popcorn bowl!
Press 1 to use Instacart and get your family's sick day essentials delivered in as fast as 30 minutes. Press 2 to keep working. Do not press 2. Just use Instacart, Brian.
I am mainly plotter with a dash of pantser.
Oh, yeah.
I need to know how my novel begins, I need to know how it ends, and I need to know the main beats I'm going to hit along the way. But sometimes I'll start writing and I'll decide to take the scenic path instead. So I still have the potential for surprises, which excites me. And, you know, like Amy said, I think one of the joys of writing are those moments of discovery where it suddenly occurs to you as you're writing it. And those moments just feel like magic, really. But the rest of it is plotted.
Okay. So you're closer to the sort of, what do they call it? Headlight planning or something, where you can you see, you know where the thing you're headed to is, but you don't know what's between you and the... Yes,
absolutely. So I'll have, you know, the beginning, the end, I'll have the main points along the way, but I don't know which way we're going to get to those points.
Yes, exactly. The journey is the
That's
destination.
interesting. I've never heard that term before. I'm definitely not that. In the last 2 Mina books, I didn't know who the killer was when I started writing, or I thought I did. And then somebody else told me that they were the killer, and I'm like, that's so rude. You're not the killer, go away. But they convinced me that they were. So yeah, I changed my mind on both of them, which I think hopefully is good. I really surprised my editor with this one, who the killer was. And I think it was because I'd gone back and forth so many times on who it was that there's loads of red herrings everywhere. So hopefully that makes for a better mystery.
I'm really excited to read this one. I think I may have read an early draft of it.
I think you might have read the opening scene. I don't think you've read much more of this one. I'm going to have to send you it at some point. Actually, when it's a bit better, I'll send you it.
I mean, if you as the author didn't know who the killer was while you were writing it, I think it must be very hard for anyone reading it to guess who the killer is.
I hope so. I pride myself on that. I think that's really, I don't know. I think I can still enjoy a mystery if I know where it's going. Like sometimes I think I've predicted it and then I'm right and I can still enjoy it. But I love it when people send me a message and say, I can't believe you did that. Like that really shocked me. That's just brilliant. And in 2 places on this one, Ren, my editor, wrote, Amy, no. And I was like, I can't wait for people. And I think she wrote at one point, "I've been especially brutal in this book." And I was like, that's the biggest compliment anyone can give me.
Next question. Let's start with Mia this time. What?
Oh no.
When you write your novels, when you're starting out in your novels, what is usually the first part of your story? For example, do you start with the character or the setting or a magic system or whatever it might be?
I start with my setting. I know a lot of people start with plot or characters, but I always go for setting. If I'm completely honest, I go for the vibes first. So I'll be describing a new idea to my agent and I'll be like, oh, if it was a color palette, it would be this, or it would be set in this city or this country. But I won't know, which characters are going to be in the story or what's actually going to happen in the story. I just have a feeling I want to capture.
Oh, okay. That's cool. I think of the people I've asked, setting is one of the rarer things that people start with.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's my main strength as an author are my settings. Maybe that's why they come first.
Yeah. Well, you do a lot of historical settings and fairy tale retellings. So that's a kind of, I guess fairy tale is kind of a setting, and so the kind of merging of those two things. It's a pretty pivotal part of your stories, isn't it?
Absolutely. And one of my main hobbies is traveling. So I think maybe a sense of place is more important to me, or I take more notice of it maybe.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. And Amy, I think from last time, I remember you saying that you start with character.
Yeah, I mean, with the Mina books, it was the setting that was the initial impetus, but I don't think a story really takes off for me until I figure out the characters. So the same with The House with Teeth. I knew there was a house. I was like, why does it have teeth? That's gross and weird. But it wasn't until I thought about the people to populate it that it feels real to me. So I think, like Mia, the setting is the first spark, and then with the Mina books, I went back and forth on characters, and I didn't know if it was going to be an adult book or YA or what it was. But as soon as I thought of those two sisters who had a bit of a fragmented relationship and wanted to try and rebuild it, that was when it started to take off and feel like a book. And the same as The House with Teeth, Violet came immediately, and I couldn't figure out who this other character was going to be that she needed to bounce off. And then when I did, the plot took off from there. So I think it tends to go setting closely followed by character, and that's the bit that really flashes it out for me.
Yeah, that's okay. So you're both setting, Amy sort of setting, leaning into character.
Yeah, I think so.
Great for short stories, I think, starting with setting, because so much of a short story is the atmosphere. Because a lot of the time you don't have the sort of length of time to really do like a wide, big character arc. So a lot of it does just come from the setting.
Well, that's very true. Yeah, you don't get as much bonding time with your characters. So
yeah,
it counts for a lot. I never thought about it that way.
No, and actually quite a lot of our stories are very limited in setting as well. So the setting has to work pretty hard. If your characters aren't going to leave this quite confined place that you've put them in. Like say in Catherine's book, they're not trapped where they are, but they're sort of in a very close circumference. So I think I really enjoyed writing the short story because it felt more contained. It felt a bit easier to manage. I always get to a point where my novel, I don't know whether you do this, Mia, but I start to feel really out of control. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've set off all these things and I need to sort them out now. And it's really stressful, that first stage of editing for me, when I've made a mess that I need to tidy up.
That makes sense. That brings me nicely into the third question that I had for you guys, which was, and Amy, we can go straight off the back of that answer this. Do you prefer the initial sort of writing phase, or do you prefer the editing phase?
I've got two very niche bits I really like. I like that first moment of starting to write, right at the beginning when it's all exciting and new and fresh, and I'm not bogged down by the 50,000 words or whatever I've written. The beginning I love. And I also love the bit I'm on now where the book's basically done and I'm just refining and making sure that everything's really tight. I'm quite a kind of perfectionist, nitpicky person, and I like every thread to be tied up when I'm writing. So I think the very beginning and the very end are my favourites. The middle is hard.
Yeah, the tricky middle bit. What about you, Mia?
The middle is hard. I have a really weird sort of drafting process. Amy can attest to this, where my first drafts are basically half draft, half outline. And there'll be whole chapters that are just bullet points, whole chapters missing, very, very low word count. And then I just sort of build on it and flesh it out. So I think my favorite point is honestly any time when the words are flowing and I feel like what I'm writing is good and I'm getting really into it. I feel like I can get stuck at any point of the process, and that's just no fun.
Okay, that's cool. So you're very much into the additive editing, where you write sort of very succinctly and then you add to it, as opposed to writing a lot and then cutting back on it.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I do. And I think if you look at most of my books, my original rough draft is probably still buried in the middle of it in bits and pieces. And I've just gone around it and fleshed it out and built on it, rather than having to rewrite or cut back. Yeah,
that's really cool. I always think there's something just more positive about additive editing.
Yes. So I do find that it does tend to make drafting, sort of doing later drafts and editing myself, easier. But I do have that panic at the beginning where it's like, oh, I have my first draft written. Oh, but it's only 20,000 words.
I have to say, though, I tried it, Mia, and it really does work. There are always a couple of scenes that I'm really nervous to write in the Mina books, and it's always the action ones where there's, like your book, Jamie, when there's lots of moving parts, I get really nervous. Mm-hmm. And it was so freeing to write, this is a X scene, it's going to have these details in, this person's nearly going to die, this person's actually going to die, move on. And it was so fun. And literally, I didn't want to write that scene. And when I actually felt in the mood, I just went back and wrote it. And I really loved that. But I'm more of a write it chronologically. It kind of comes out about the length it ends up, because I remove things and add things and move them around. But generally, my draft's about 87,000 words. And I think that's probably about how the book will be at the end.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But like you said, Jamie, the downside of it though is that sometimes I do need to cut a whole scene and or completely rewrite it, but I've kind of come to terms with that this is my process and it's quick enough for me to hit my deadlines and I enjoy it enough. I'm not generally tearing my hair out too much. My only problem is time, really. I've got generally 2 hours a day in which to write from between the hours of 7 and 9 p.m, which is not ideal for my brain working. So that's my only hiccup really with writing. I tend to find the process pretty smooth apart from that.
Yes, it's always a race against time,
Amy,
isn't it?
in a few years, when your little one's a little bit older, as soon as you have more time, you're going to be churning out all these epic novels.
Thanks.
Using that sliver of time so effectively, I just think.
I hope so. Although my friend, my first book came out when Nathan was a tiny baby, and my friend did a similar thing with her doctorate. She was working on her doctorate while her children were small, and she said to me that time poor people are the most efficient. So I do worry that the more time rich I get, the less efficient I'll be. Like I'll spend a whole day and go, oh, I've just watched Netflix today, whereas I've got an hour. I know I need to pack everything into that hour.
Yeah. I can confirm I'm less efficient.
I think it's true. Having like a sort of full-time thing to do really focuses your lens for when you do come to sit down to do writing or whatever, the hobby that you want to pursue is.
Yeah, and that's the thing for me. Writing is just starting to feel like a career. It definitely started as a hobby when the first Mina book came out. I was with a small publisher, quite a small advance. It felt like a career, but like a small part of it. Whereas now I'm edging towards, I'm going to have 4 books out by next year. So It starts to feel like, that is my main career and my actual day job is like the kind of secondary now.
Don't tell your boss at your day job.
I think he probably knows that my real love, he knows my real love is writing, and I do enjoy my job. But I only work 2 days now. So it feels like, being a mum, then being an author, then having a day job. It's sort of that order.
Yeah. I get you're at the phase where the writing is starting to feel less like your sort of side hustle and more like your main thing.
Yeah. That's what I'm
Amazing.
working towards, it being my actual hustle. Yeah.
My full hustle. Awesome. Well, that's cool. And it's really interesting chatting to you guys and hearing your different kind of ways of approaching stories and stuff, where that's the same or where it differs. And that brings us to what is always the final question of the podcast. Amy, you've already answered this. I'll ask Maria and then give her a bit of time by jumping back to Amy to checking that you don't want to change your answer. And the question is, as always, Amy and Maria, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book would you want it to be? Last time, Amy, you chose Alex Garland's The Beach. More specifically, the book, but you did like the film, but you preferred the book. Is that still the one you'd go with?
Yeah, do you know what? As you were asking the question, I panicked and thought, I can't remember what I said, but if I'm going to say anything, I'll say The Beach by Alex Garland. Okay. So it must still be my answer, because I just think it has genius survival advice in it about being on a beach sort of environment, an island environment, as well as being a great book and still be one of my favourites. I feel like it has a dual purpose. Like I still can read that book over and over again, but it also might help me survive.
Yeah, I think it's a solid choice. And as you say, yeah, combining a sort of literary aspect and story with also they're surviving on an island, kind of. I don't know if it would be exactly the same, but I'm sure there'd be some transferable skills. Now, Mia, what do you think? If you could have one book stranded on this desert island, which would it be?
Oh, I hate this question so much. It's so hard. So first I was thinking, oh, that's really smart for Amy to say The Beach. Should I say something that's kind of like, Robinson Crusoe or something like that? But then I was like, well, am I really going to want to read that again and again and again? I like it, but not enough if that's my only book. Mm-hmm. This is really impossible to answer. I genuinely have no idea. I can't pick just one. Can I take like a notebook and a pen instead and, write my own story? If I've got a lot of time to spare, maybe I can just, come up with a massive fantasy epic with all that time just sitting there on the sand.
You can absolutely take a pad of paper and write your own story if that's what you would like to do.
To be clear, I'm not saying that my story would be better than other books. I'm just, thinking practically of how to use my time. Yeah.
And then you could take notes as well, because if you needed to note down different parts of the island and things, you could think really practically about it.
Oh, I could draw maps.
Exactly, yeah. Get into cartography.
I feel like this is a little bit of a cop-out answer, but you're very kindly letting me go along with it. So,
well, you're not the first person who's wanted to take their own pad or whatever, notepad.
Oh no, I'm less original than I thought.
Well, I think, no one will be as original as Melissa Welliver's answer, which was that she wanted to take the Argos catalogue. So don't worry about it.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
But the physical Argos catalogue, not the new, they're all machines now. She wanted the old ones.
The physical ones were the ones we had fun with when we were kids, kind of circling all the toys you wanted.
Yeah, all the pages stuck together when they're laminated and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure I can still smell it in my memory.
Oh God. I don't know if you want to be smelling that.
No, just like a nice catalogue-y smell. I don't know. I guess I've always been sniffing books and apparently catalogues.
Okay, well, what a wonderful note to end the episode on. Thank you so much to the both of you, Amy and Mia, for coming on and telling us all about A Taste of Darkness and the anthology and how that all works, as well as kind of what you guys are up to and how you kind of approach your writing and stuff. It's been really cool chatting with the two of you.
Oh, thanks so much, Jamie, for having us on.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's been great fun.
And for anyone wanting to keep up with what Amy and Mia are doing, you can follow Amy on Twitter and Instagram at YAUnderMySkin, on TikTok at Amy McCaw Author, and on YouTube you can find her as Amy McCaw. You can find Mia on Twitter at The Cozy Reader, or on Instagram and TikTok at Cozy Reads. And to make sure you don't miss an episode of this podcast, follow along on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. You can support the show on Patreon, and for more bookish chat, check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Amy and Mia, and thanks to everyone listening. We'll catch you on the next episode.
O'Reilly! You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Introducing new dirty drinks from Sonic. Whatever your fave is, you can now make it dirty. Fanta fans can make it dirty. Dr. Pepper devotees can make it dirty. Even ocean water aficionados can make it dirty. You name it, we can make it dirty. Now you may be asking yourself, how do you make a Sonic drink dirty? By infusing it with a delicious blend of coconut flavor, sweet cream, and lime, of course. What were you thinking? Get your brain out of the gutter. New dirty drinks, now at Sonic. Fanta and Dr. Pepper are used under license. Limited time only. Participating Sonic drive-ins.